find myself like very depressed. I would spend days in bed, and a lot of this had to do with the cystitis pain. It's not normal to just feel like, what's the point all the time? That's not normal. Like, to not be able to get excited about stuff is not normal. So I was dealing with that a lot. I would do things like, I love ballroom dancing. That's my sport. That's my hobby. I love it so much. I was canceling dance lessons just consistently. I would wake up and I'd say, no, I don't feel like going. Now I don't cancel any lessons. Like, it's been years since I've canceled a lesson. Like, you would have to tie me to the radiator to make me cancel a lesson. Like, I am there, It's life-changing in so many ways to not be dealing with anxiety and depression. It's just so worth it. Like, when people say, how can you stay carnivore? Aren't you bored, or don't you find it restrictive? And I'm like, no, not at all.
Hello, Linda. Welcome to our show. We're so happy to have you.
Hey, you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. This is so cool. I'm like so happy to be a part of it. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, like we always like to do, we would all love to hear about yourself, your healing journey, and why you choose a carnivore diet.
So for me, carnivore started way back in 2015. I was looking to lose just a few pounds. I had 2 kids, and I remembered back after my college years, I had learned about the Atkins diet. And the beginning 2 weeks of the Atkins diet is what they call the induction phase. It's a ketogenic diet phase where it's supposed to last for 2 weeks. But that 2-week period for me of ketosis was like where I lived when I did Atkins. And I did Atkins for quite some time, and I found success with it. I always felt really good. It was super low carb, ketogenic, and I enjoyed it. And so I remembered, if I need to lose some weight, I'll just go back into ketosis. And that's what I did. That was back in 2015. And as I was looking through Facebook one day for keto recipes, the carnivore Facebook group, Zeroing In on Health, like popped up for me. And I read the stories of these people who were doing this really sort of extreme version, in my mind, of an Atkins ketogenic diet, which was just the meat and the cheese, the broccoli and the low carb vegetables. And it was like, okay, I can do this. I can try this. I can do this for 30 days. And if I can look like Charlene Anderson, I don't know if you know who that is, but she's one of the OG carnivores, and she's just gorgeous. And I was like, well, if I can look like her, if I can look like Kelly Hogan, like, okay, I'm in. I can do this for 30 days. Let's see how it goes. And I started carnivore in a very, loose sort of way. There was, all the cheese I wanted, all the meat I wanted, all the pepperonis. And, it was just, if it was a plant, I wasn't going to eat it. And if it was a meat, I was going to. And it worked really well for me. And now it has been like 9.5 years. I mean, I've tweaked the way I do carnivore. It's a little bit cleaner nowadays. There's, not as much salami, pepperoni, and stuff like that. I go a little lower on the dairy. I go a little lower on the fat. But it's just been phenomenal for me. What I noticed first switching from keto to carnivore was that my joint pain resolved, that I'd had this joint pain since my 20s. Like, my knees were just always achy. And then migraine headaches that I always had went away. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going back. This is good enough for me. And the bloating, the gas and the bloating that comes from the vegetables just wasn't there. So I was like, I don't see a need to go back to keto. I'm just going to stay here in carnivore. A whole bunch of other things got better over time. And sure, there was some weight loss. Like, I think I wanted to lose, I really wanted to lose about 15 pounds, but I really needed to lose like 5 pounds. And I did. And I was fine with that. But like, the mental state got better, anxiety lifted, depression lifted, my periods regulated, my interstitial cystitis pain went away, which if you don't know, it's a super painful. Oh, do you deal with this? Oh my gosh. So yes, it's a super painful condition where it feels like you have a chronic UTI that doesn't go away, and antibiotics don't work. And antibiotics obviously are not great for our guts to be chronically on antibiotics anyway. So when that pain started to resolve, it became really life-changing. And then down the road, I realized that I have lipedema. I got that diagnosis. And I realized that carnivore is helping me with that too, because it's keeping inflammation down. And I've been able to sort of chip away at that, lipedema fat too. So I'm sticking with it. I just feel like the health benefits are so tremendous for me. Like, I remember on holidays, I would say, well, let me just try a traditional Thanksgiving, or a traditional Christmas dinner. And I would do those traditional meals with like the sweet potatoes. And, I'm Italian, we have lasagna, would try that stuff. And I would just feel terrible. So I've sort of stopped experimenting in that way. I don't go back to or have any, what people would consider cheat meals, because I really just feel terrible eating any other way. Fiber and I just don't get along. So, if it's a plant food, typically I'm not going to eat it. I can get away with, and I do tolerate pretty well, some tomato, some onion. But other than that, anything else, I generally stay away from. I do stay away from. like plants and I are just not friends. So that's kind of my story. Obviously there's some details in there that, anybody has any questions, they can ask me, but yeah, that's my story. It's been 9.5 years and I'm not going back.
Well, let's start digging into some of those details. So when I saw, that you kind of had the interstitial cystitis, I was like, I have that too. So I can tell you, I did have UTIs, which is why the diagnosis took so long, because I kind of had both. But then it was like, sometimes I'd have this UTI I thought was a UTI, and the antibiotic wouldn't work. And I was like, what's going on? So I would try different antibiotics. And it was terrible. And that was like all through my 20s. But yeah, since going carnivore, I could never eat. There was a bunch of foods I couldn't eat because it would inflame and flare up my bladder. And tell me if your story is similar, but the doctor's just kind of like, here's a list of foods you might want to avoid, just trial and error. We don't really know. There's they can put you on a low dose antibiotic and you can kind of be on that, but there's really not much else they can do. But nobody ever said it's inflammation. Nobody said that kind of stuff to me, but I have not had a flare up at all. None, zero. Since
it's amazing.
I went, yeah, it's been a little over a year. And it's because it's so uncomfortable. If any of you have had a UTI, you know how uncomfortable that is. And to just feel that way almost all the time. And there's just no relief. So Linda, I didn't mean to steal the show here, but that's my little experience in a nutshell. Can you kind of tell us?
That's exactly it. It's like a UTI and it is constant pain and there's no relief. Typically, if you've got a UTI and you go on antibiotics, you'll feel better within hours. That antibiotic will start to work and you'll feel better within hours. But with interstitial cystitis pain, it doesn't let up, and it's all day, all night. And that when you get what we call a flare, it can last for a week and a half, and it is debilitating. It is it's so hard for people to believe how much pain you're in. If you had to scale it from a 1 to 10, it is a 9. It is up there. It's a ridiculous amount of a burning pain. And it's my understanding now that a lot of that pain is coming from the oxalates that have sort of settled in the bladder area. And some of it is actually vulvar pain too. So it just sort of takes over the whole area. And it is you don't want to do anything. You can't do much. It hurts to sit. It hurts to lay down. Going anywhere is forget about it. And you sort of feel like you need to go to the bathroom all the time, but you don't. It's not that, but it's kind of that urgency feeling too. So when you get rid of oxalate, which, it's a big deal, but it's in a lot of plants. When you get rid of oxalate, you can start healing that cystitis pain, and then you can start living life again. It's incredible. I never thought that I would be able to live without that pain because it had gone on for so many years. And it wasn't all the time the flares would subside, but you never knew when it was going to come on. and the over-the-counter medications that they give for it, I'm sure you've tried them all. They don't really work. And the food list that they tell you, just, don't have orange juice or don't have tomato, they think it has to do with acid. And sure, like if you have like ulcers in your bladder, or if you're having a pain and you drink the acid, like that will make it hurt more. But that's not the root cause of this bladder pain or the vulvar pain. And I don't know of anyone other than like Sally Norton who has put 2 and 2 together that it's oxalate causing this pain. So I'm so happy to be rid of it. I mean, it lets me now do things just like a regular person, where it used to be like I wasn't like a regular person. It was like it depended on if I was in the middle of a flare or not, what I could do or how my vacation was going to go, and really just debilitating. So I'm so happy to be done with that. It's great. And I'm so happy to hear that you figured out that you're flare free with Carnivore and you're sticking with it. It's just so much better.
Yeah, you were mentioning about oxalate dumping. I feel like this is like a really hot topic. It's kind of confusing. Can you explain what oxalate dumping is? What were your symptoms specifically? And can you give any tips for someone who might be going through this?
Yeah. So there's oxalate pain and then there's oxalate dumping pain. From what I understand, it's like 2 different sort of phenomenon, right? So I think when you've got like an overload of oxalate in your system, you can get things like joint pain and starts to feel like arthritis. And I think like things like gout and skin rashes, all sorts of things can be caused by overconsumption of oxalate. I mean, if you eat too much oxalate, you can actually die from oxalate toxicity. It's super toxic. But what happens when you completely eliminate oxalate from your diet, like if you were to go strict carnivore, just meat, salt, water, you've been on a high oxalate, maybe a vegan or a vegetarian diet, you start this process where your body says, okay, we're not getting any oxalate anymore. Let's just get rid of it all. And that can shove oxalate from where it's hidden. It can shove it into places that are like really painful and cause like flu-like symptoms for people and a lot of more joint pain and just malaise. So the recommendation to ease oxalate dumping is actually to introduce a little bit of oxalate back in. And it's my understanding there's a test you can do if you think you're oxalate dumping, if you're not feeling well and you have some black tea and you start feeling better within 10 minutes, then it's the oxalate. Like that small dose of oxalate will stop the dumping symptoms. And then you need to just sort of continue having some oxalate so that you don't dump it all into your system at one time. I mean, I'm not an expert on oxalate, but that's my understanding.
So when you first went carnivore, did your interstitial cystitis, not saying it right,
It's so hard
did
to
it
say.
actually get worse because the oxalates would start dumping, or was it immediate relief?
I never completely got rid of oxalate. So it's difficult to say because I've always included spices in my diet. So there always has been this low level of oxalate, definitely not as much as I was having because I was having, lots of spinach when I was keto. So I can't say for sure if ever I've had any huge oxalate dumping episode. I think maybe one time, but like it's difficult to say because maybe I actually just had the flu, So, it's difficult to say. I think a lot of people say, oh, I had this, I was feeling terrible, it's oxalate dumping. Like maybe not. I will say though that I for many years had crystals coming through my skin, which absolutely is oxalate coming out. I've had it like on the backs of my arms, on the palm of my hand, and on my feet, like it's like a little rough patch. And then if you pull at it, it is like crystals. And so for a long time, these crystals were coming out of my skin. So I know I had a lot of oxalate in me and that has stopped.
So another thing that you talked about was your mental health, like your anxiety. And it's so funny. I feel like we just met today, but I'm like, this is like my sister right here. Our experiences are so the same. So like I had all these mental health issues I didn't even realize I had, like anxiety, until I started carnivore and they went away. Can you tell us just a little bit of like how that went for you with your
Yeah.
anxiety and other mental health?
Sure. It's the kind of thing, like you said, you don't even realize that you have it. You just sort of think it's your normal personality. And it's not normal at all. I mean, I would have panic attacks a lot, but it runs in my family. Like panic attacks are just sort of what we do. And so when I started having panic attacks, I talked to my sister and she's like, oh yeah, I have those all the time. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. And our brother does too. And I was like, this is horrible. And so I, I would get these crazy panic attacks that would wake me up at night. It was so hard for me to calm myself down. Or if I had a panic attack in the middle of the day, I would literally go in my closet. Like I would have to shut the door, be in the dark, say to myself, I am okay. I am okay. And it would take me so long just to calm down for no good reason. I mean, my life is pretty good. It's not like I have anything to be all that anxious about. And I would also find myself like very depressed. So I would spend days in bed, and a lot of this had to do with the cystitis pain for sure. But it's not normal to just feel like, what's the point all the time? When you're living life and you've got kids and husband, and you're like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. That's not normal. Like to not be able to get excited about stuff is not normal. So I was dealing with that a lot. I would do things like, I love ballroom dancing. That's my sport. That's my hobby. I love it so much. And I was canceling dance lessons just consistently. I would wake up and I'd say, no, I don't feel like going. I just didn't feel like going. And I would lose the money on the lesson and everything. But the depression sort of like had me. And now I don't cancel any lessons. Like it's been years since I've canceled a lesson. Like you would have to tie me to the radiator to make me cancel a lesson. Like I am there. So it's life-changing in so many ways to not be dealing with anxiety and depression. You know, it's it's just so worth it. Like when people say, how can you stay carnivore? Aren't you bored? Or don't you find it restrictive? And I'm like, no, not at all. There's just no way that I would want to go back to being that anxious, that depressed, like that, like paranoid at times too. Like, there's no way I would want to go back to that. Like, panic attacks are terrible. So, eating meat all the time is pretty great. That is not anything close to terrible. So, now I'm sticking with this forever. Like, I'm pretty good here.
Yeah, I relate with that so much. I also suffered with panic attacks and depression to the point where I would start disassociating. And it was this like super dark point in my life where I didn't drive, I didn't brush my teeth, I didn't shower. And so it's like, it's so awful that it like sucks the life out of you to the point where you don't do the things you love. You don't surround yourself with people you love. And this plagues so many people, especially in our country. And it's like, I completely agree with you. It's like, yeah, if I have to eat meat for the rest of my life to make sure that I don't go back to that, it's worth it. And it's so funny because there's so many people who choose what they can consider to be convenient. It's like, oh, it's convenient to eat all of these different types of food. It's comfortable to be able to just, eat whatever you want. But then you look at the other side of the coin and it's just like horrible, like living conditions. And so did you ever have any kind of issues with eating, or do you feel like you were kind of balanced the whole way through? You did mention you did keto and obviously you did Atkins. So is that something you just did for weight loss? I was kind of curious about your background before you started.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had any kind of disordered eating, and I've never had a real problem with weight. So I've never been terribly overweight, although I did gain a ridiculous amount of weight in pregnancy, way more than would be normal. I just swelled up. Um, that was wild. But I've generally been able to be one of those people that can eat a lot and stay, well, I would say in my 20s and 30s, I could eat a lot and sort of stay at a pretty good weight. Things kind of changed with pregnancy for me, and my legs kind of blew up like a lot. And that is just one of the things that happens with lipedema. It sort of shows itself at puberty and in pregnancy. And so my bottom half kind of got very heavy. But on top, and like generally, if you were to just check my weight against my height, my BMI has always been good. And doing a ketogenic diet was just something I did to like maintain weight, lose a few pounds if I was, feeling like I wanted to look a little bit better. I had learned about a ketogenic diet like back in college. So I understood like what a protein sparing modified fast was. I understood what ketosis was. And so I knew that it was safe. But for me, it really was just, for weight loss. But reading all about, Atkins, I also understood that it was, good for your health. So it was something that I utilized. Now, over the years after pregnancy, I did all sorts of crazy things to try and drop that baby weight, like Hollywood juice drink. Do you guys know this like orange drink? It's like a Hollywood juice concentrate. And then you know, two nods and one shaking head. You like combine it with water and it makes like a 500 calorie drink or something that you're supposed to drink throughout the day. And you do that for 2 days. And so you're having just 500 calories, or maybe it's 400 calories of straight up juice. That's it. Like there's nothing good in there for you. There's no protein. There's no nutrition. I think it's mostly carrot juice in there. I can taste it now. I joined LA Weight Loss for a few days and they sold me a bunch of bars that were just loaded with fiber and sugar. And I was like, this is not for me. And I asked for a refund. This is crazy. So it was going to be keto. Like I was like, I've just got to just go back to keto. But it was difficult it has been more difficult for me than I think some people to lose the weight in the legs that I have been trying to lose. So this is still an ongoing struggle for me. My weight is fine. It's well within range, but there's this disproportion that's improved recently. But it's always a little strange to see, if you looked at my legs and then you looked at my upper body, you'd be like, those two don't match. And they really don't match. But I'm working on it and slowly chipping away at it. Like lipedema is just such a crazy, wild thing. And, so that's something I'm working on with like a higher protein approach to carnivore to try and not necessarily lose weight, but just to get a better composition in my legs.
We do have someone here asking, is there anything besides diet that we can do for lipedema?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so listen, first off, I'll say that the only approved solution cure for lipedema is liposuction. And for me, that's just going to be at the back of the table. I think that if you do that, that's fine. It does work. And for a lot of people, it relieves pain, pressure. It can be amazing. For me, I'm not a huge fan of surgery. So I'm leaving that for, the end of the line. That will be like sort of my last resort. What I'm doing now are sort of all the conservative measures. Actually, I just got a trampoline delivered to the house, if you can believe it. I've got one of these little rebounders, which are supposed to be really good for your lymphatics and moving fluid, which tends to accumulate with lipedema. So rebounding is something that people can do. I haven't started that yet. What I have done and what's helped me the most, other than the diet, other than prioritizing protein, and we should talk more about that because that really has been the thing that helped the most. But like she wanted to know other than the diet. So other than the diet, cold therapy has helped me a ton. So I'll do these like ice bath plunges, and I just recently got a chiller so that I can chill the water in my tub and do cold baths. Red light therapy has also been helpful, but Another two big things were so surprising to me, but grounding in the morning and getting morning sun and making sure I go to sleep on time have been huge. Like they've just been huge for inflammation. And I don't know exactly how grounding helps so much, but it really does. It somehow sheds inflammation. And so the days where if I miss going outside and I don't do my grounding tree, I have this tree off my balcony that I touch every morning and I look at the sun. If I don't do that, I feel more inflamed throughout the day. So that's very helpful for lipedema. Um, Dry brushing can be very helpful, and just keeping that lymphatic fluid from being stagnant. So a lot of times the pressure from the leaky valves, chronic venous insufficiency often comes alongside lipedema. So the leaky valves in the vein cause this stagnation of lymphatic fluid, and moving that fluid can be very helpful to mitigate symptoms. But really, it's just about symptom management for the most part for lipedema. Other than the liposuction, there's no sure way to reduce that fat, because with lipedema, it's not a calories in, calories out problem. It's like you cannot reduce that fat with exercise or with diet, is what they say. I am slowly and very intently trying to prove that wrong. Like, I am training ballroom 3 times a week, and I am intent on getting rid of that lipedema fat with a slight and appropriate caloric deficit, and with putting my calorie priority into protein, building muscle, and then very slowly chipping away at the remaining fat. And we'll see how it goes. I'm 2 years into this high protein thing. I've seen tremendous improvement in my legs. Like, I can see muscles there that I didn't see before. Now the question is, have I just reduced normal obesity fat in my legs, or have I really reduced the lipedema fat? And there's no way to know. So I can't say for sure I've gotten rid of my lipedema. I can say that my bruising is less, my swelling is less, and the sensitivity to touch is also now less. So that's huge. Like, I can go get a pedicure and a leg massage, and it doesn't feel like I want to punch the lady in the throat, like, I'm okay with that now. Or I can get a massage on my legs, whereas it used to be that like, don't touch my legs. Like, cat across the lap, it was excruciating. Like, I would want to take that cat and throw it across the room. So with the measures I've been doing, with the conservative measures, all that's improved. So I'm pretty happy, and I do feel like I don't know how far I can go, and I'll never have legs like a model. I mean, maybe, I don't know, never say never, right? I'm keeping a positive outlook, which is another thing that you need to do for lipedema. Absolutely. Like, you have to believe that you can get rid of it. And I probably should have said this first, because it's so important. I have gone through these periods where I've spiraled down, and I've said, there's nothing I can do about this. It's just going to get worse. I'm going to end up in a wheelchair. I'm going to end up like these stage 3 pictures. I'm going to have to stop dancing. Like, it's just going to keep growing. And that's what the doctors will tell you. It's progressive, and you can manage symptoms, but it's just going to keep growing, and the diet's not going to change anything. And so if I start spiraling, and if I start thinking that way, it'll get worse, and the legs will feel heavier, and the symptoms will come on stronger. But when I truly believe, like, I'm fine, I feel great, I'm going to chip away at this, I've got nothing but time, and I know what to do, and I'm going to stay the course, I'm going to keep prioritizing protein, I'm going to go to my dance lessons, things really do get better. So I'm just going to keep up with it.
So I absolutely want to hear more specifics about prioritized protein and how you do that. So put that thought on hold for 1 second, because we have a couple questions. I just want to, because people they were wondering if you had tried some things. So Lady Fritzeder wants to know, hi, Linda, have you looked at vibration plates?
I have not. That's something I've never explored. I've seen people use them and they love them. They swear by them. It's supposed to be very good for lymphatics. I don't know how I would do. I'm not great with like shaking. I feel like there's a lot back there that would jiggle around. And so I don't know, vibration plate to me, it seems like a lot of jiggling. I don't know how comfortable I am with that. You know, like running with lipedema, I'm sure that this person knows it's uncomfortable because it's a lot of stuff is moving back there. So I don't know if I would try a vibration plate. I should try it, but I haven't.
Oh. Okay, and then there's one more. Jenny wants to know, have you tried fascia blasting? I know you mentioned dry brushing, but I think fascia blasting is a little different.
Yes, I have tried fascia blasting and I have bruised myself from it. There's definitely something to it. You can break up the fascial adhesions if you're consistent with it. I do believe the people who say that they've had success with it. And gua sha is another thing I probably should have mentioned, where you can take a large gua sha and you can sort of scrape. So I have done. I've also had my massage therapist do some fascia work on my legs, where she just manually with her thumbs, as painful as it sounds, and it really is, she has gone into some fibrotic tissue on my thighs and with consistency over, you know, a month or two has smoothed out some of the dimpling that comes with lipedema. So that's like another form of fascia blasting that might be better. Some of those tools can be really damaging if you have no self-control.
Okay, so if you could please tell us, what does it look like when you're prioritizing protein? Like, what if you have ratios, or can you just tell us, like, what does a plate of food look like? Because I hear that phrase a lot, like prioritize protein, but like, what does that mean for you, and how does that work with your lipedema?
Sure. So I think there's this misconception, like a lot of people do carnivore and they say, well, you've got to have, 70% of your calories from fat, and we prioritize fat here. Or you've got to have 80% of your calories from fat because we prioritize fat. Fat is an energy source. Everybody needs fat. We prioritize it. And then when people start talking about prioritizing protein, I think they think that means you should get 70% of your calories from protein or 80% of your calories from protein, which would be insane. So prioritizing protein as a macro for me is more like getting at least 40% of your calories from protein. I like to get 40, 45% of my calories from protein. But mainly what I do is not go by the macro percentage, but I more go by the grams of protein that I'm trying to hit. And I've sorted out for myself my grams of protein that I'm comfortable with by doing, like, I did a 10-week experiment where I did 50% of my calories from protein, and I was just like hungry all the time. It wasn't working out. Then I went down to 60%, and I noted the amount of grams of protein that was, where I started to feel satisfied. I started tracking sort of after the fact, where I would eat, I would write it down. I would eat, I would write it down. And at the end of the day, I would say, okay, I'm full. I'm definitely done. How many grams of protein did I have? And it was always around 180 or 190 grams of protein. And so for me, it's that gram amount that now I prioritize. And I make sure that I get that. And I know that if I'm hungry, if I haven't eaten enough, I'm going to go towards higher protein foods where I know that I'm going to get in more grams of protein and a moderate amount of fat. So I'm still getting in like 90 grams of fat a day and about 180, 190 grams of protein a day if I'm doing somewhere around, 1,600, 1,700 calories, which is a slight deficit for me. I'm a small person. So to me, that plate looks like any kind of red meat other than, say, like fatty ribs, oxtail, or like a spinalis and the big chunk of fat on a ribeye. Those are the super fatty cuts. So any kind of like beef belly or well, I should just say like beef belly. Those are the really fatty ones. And I mean, like the point of a brisket is really fatty. So there are some cuts that I try to stay away from, because I know if I eat those cuts and I'm not measuring, I'm probably going to go over on energy, and I'm going to be low on protein, and I'm still going to be hungry, because I don't find satiety in fat. And this will vary from person to person. Some people need to hit a protein threshold to find satiety. Other people need to hit a fat threshold to find satiety. And neither of those is right or wrong. It's just some people do better with more protein and some people do better with more fat. And I've sort of worked this out for myself. So my meals are like any cut of red meat, or, chicken thighs. I do a lot of flat iron steaks. I do a lot of ground sirloin. And what other steaks? Like New York strips, any kind of T-bone steak. Obviously, tenderloin is pretty lean, but you can be eating chuck roast all day, every day, and you're still prioritizing protein. It's just when you're very determined to add fat to your meat, that's when things go high fat carnivore. So for the most part, red meat isn't as fatty as people think. Like if you're doing short ribs constantly, or if you're doing ribeyes constantly and eating the whole tail, or if you're adding suet, it's high fat. But all the other cuts in the supermarket, they're generally pretty lean. And the rest of anybody who talks about diet would say those are high fat. You've got to stay away from red meat because it's so fatty. So for us carnivores, we think it's so lean. Everybody else thinks it's super fatty, but really it's a great, almost like 60% of calories from fat is pretty typical for any regular cut of steak that you would get in a restaurant. It's just adding the butter is something I don't do anymore. Having suet on the side, I don't do that anymore. And I don't eat like a pound of pork belly for lunch, because that's like 90% of the calories of that are coming from fat. And it's so easy to overeat. So my meals are, I think pretty typical to what a lot of carnivores are doing. I'm just not adding the extra sticks of butter.
No, that makes complete sense. And it seems, obviously you've been doing this for like 9.5 years, almost a decade, and we all can learn so much from you. Thank you for sharing that. We do have a question. Before I say that, I do have to address this because it's just so sweet. Thank you, Jonathan, for sending what are they called? Super chats? Donations? I'm not too sure. But thank you so much for doing that. Anything that can support any of our channels is just so, so special and wonderful. And we say thank you for that. And so here is the question from Jerica. I'm on day 25. What are the pros and cons of tracking macros in carnivore for protein and fat ratios?
Well, I mean, the pros of tracking are that you get an absolute record of what you're doing so that you can then take the steps to modify it if it's not working. Or you can see what you're doing, and then you can more consistently stay the plan, right? So if you're tracking and you're doing something that works, you keep tracking and you say, yeah, I'm going to stay on this plan, see that it's working and it's still working, and I'm going to stick with it. The cons of tracking is simply just the inconvenience. I mean, if you are somebody who's obsessive about diet, or you've had a history of eating disorder, restrictive eating, I don't recommend tracking for those people because it can trigger like disordered eating behaviors to be tracking your food with people who tend to want to limit their food. So if you've ever had, like binge eating disorder, or if you've ever had anorexia, bulimia, tracking can sort of like be triggering. So at that point, I think you would want to just find a cut of meat that sort of works for the macros that you're looking for, and stick with that and figure out, how much of that meat you actually need for the day, and then do that for a while. And if you aren't getting results, change that for a while. But sticking with something very simple that you can remember, like, okay, I have this for breakfast, this for lunch, and this for dinner. And you don't have to be writing stuff down all day. You just know that at the end of the day, with those meals, you know where you're going to land. That can be really helpful. But I think it's definitely helpful for people to, at some point, do some tracking, because some people have no idea how much fat they're eating. They hear a number like, you should be eating 2 pounds of meat. And they're just like, all right, I'm going to get 2 pounds of meat. That can vary so wildly in terms of energy intake and protein intake. Like I said, if you're eating 2 pounds of pork belly and you are, 5'2", 60-year-old woman, like, you're going to be way over on energy needs. Like that 2 pounds of meat is not going to do you any favors. But if you, on the other hand, if you're having 2 pounds of chicken breast or 2 pounds of tenderloin, you're going to be way under on fat, and you're going to be really cranky, and you're probably going to be under on calories. So it's like, you've got to know what foods contain and look at a calculator like MyFitnessPal or Carb Manager or something, just so you get an idea of what you're really taking in to find out if it's appropriate.
I love this. We're getting so many questions for you. One person asked, do any of us have a Diet Coke habit? It's been the hardest thing. And I would like to add, do you use sweeteners?
So if you're asking me, I don't have a Diet Coke habit. I used to love Diet Coke, but to me, it's just a chemical. I don't know if I should curse, but it's a chemical shitstorm. Like, I don't drink Diet Coke anymore. I used to love it. I grew up on it. Like, I think, my mom probably gave it to me when I was 5, like Diet Coke every day. Sure. But I have coffee now, so I'm probably absolutely addicted to caffeine. So coffee in the morning, that's for me. But Diet Coke, no, I haven't done that in years and years.
I'd say the same. I don't drink diet. I never drank any diet sodas. It's been about 14 years, probably, when I not met my husband, I started dating my husband. Because we met earlier in life. I don't know why I'm bringing that up. Anyway, I stopped drinking sodas and I stopped eating fast food. And so that was definitely a step in the right direction. But I understand that it's kind of, I kind of felt like that when I gave up my coffee, early on in my carnivore diet. It's kind of hard to like give up those habits, those traditions that we set for ourselves. But I think that the best thing to do is just to taper off slowly. That would probably just be the best. Like, you can't just, like, my husband's trying to quit coffee right now and he's having migraines, and it's like, okay, no, let's just, like, bring a little bit back in. So that's probably the hardest part, but there is a solution for you and you know what you need to do. And I think it will just better your health overall.
And to answer the question about sweeteners, I do still include sweeteners. I do have stevia in the protein powder that I have every morning. So stevia is part of what I do, but I don't do any of the other sweeteners.
I agree with what Ellie said. And I'm in the tapering off process. I used to drink so much Coke Zero, you guys, and Diet Dr. Pepper, like so much. And I haven't 100% given it up, but there's days where I don't have any. I never thought that was possible. So I'm still working on it, but I think tapering off, it's just a little easier on the psyche, but eventually it will be gone. But it's just taken some time to let that go. But so that's my answer. How about you, Adrian? Diet soda for you?
Not a big diet soda person. I used to drink Mountain Dew. And then I was like, I don't know why my shoulders are so itchy all the time. My shoulders would just itch and itch and itch. And I gave up the diet Mountain Dew and the shoulder itch is gone. So that's really, really creepy.
Wow.
And so when I was on vacation a couple times, I tried some Diet Coke because that's usually all they ever have is diet. And it does taste chemically to me now. But I have had some sweetener. Is it helping me get to my goals? No.
I was just going to point out, so Jonathan left us a second super chat. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Talking about when we were going back to when we were talking about tracking. So like what's measured can be managed. Trackers always do best. So that's Jonathan's opinion on that. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate that. I know that I go in and out of tracking because I do tend to get obsessive, like, and it's like, okay, I got to let this go for a little bit. And then I'll come back to it. Cause it does help me, exactly what Linda said. Like, her answer was fabulous. So rewind and watch her answer again. It's exactly what she said is the reason why I do it. This is kind of a fun question. So Manuel would like to know if you ever eaten Wagyu A5. And I will say, I was at a restaurant in Las Vegas a month ago that had it, and I should have just sprung for it, but I did. It was like, it's so expensive. And I told my husband, you have to take me back because I got a ribeye. And then I was like, I should have just gotten the Wagyu. It was like, there's like this trophy thing that proves that it's really Wagyu A5 and all that. And they had it there. And I got to go back and just do it. How about you ladies?
Amazing.
Has anyone ever tried it?
No, I've only had American Wagyu, and I don't think that that's what this guy is talking about.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
I mean, this is Lioness Lifestyle, and we're Pano Pride, so this is Pano country. So definitely That's a fun question.
Well, is there Wagyu picanha?
There is Wagyu picanha, and one of these days I'm going to be ordering one, but it's not Wagyu A5. I'm pretty sure.
I can't wait for my Christmas card from you, Christy.
All this picanha talk, we have to ask. So, Linda, have you ever tried picanha? Do you know what picanha is, and have you tried picanha?
Yes, of course. Favorite. I mean, picanha is delicious. I actually have a video post about rotisserie picanha that I did on my grill. It's just fantastic. I love it. I mean, going to the Brazilian steakhouses and getting the picanha is like the best. It's a fantastic cut. And just so you know, it's a protein heavy cut. So very much like a strip steak.
Yeah. I'm drooling just thinking about it.
It's the top. So just for anyone who doesn't know, listening, or watching, it's the top sirloin cap. That's the picanha. So it is a sirloin. It's the top of the sirloin. And typically it's going to come with that really nice fat cap on top. And so the fat on picanha is absolutely delicious. If you are trying to reduce fat a little bit, that's an easy thing to just cut away, because the sirloin is going to be, a lot leaner. But like I said, it's definitely not lean. But it's going to be leaner if you just don't eat the cap.
Well, I wanted to ask you, do you have anyone so you've been doing this for a long time, like a lot longer than I have. Does anyone in your family, eat this way with you, or are you just kind of going it solo?
Well, my husband did for a short while do carnivore with me, but no, it's just me. My brother is sort of on and off carnivore sometimes. Like, he didn't believe that it would help him at all, but he said, all right, I'll try it. And he had tremendous results. So he goes back and forth, depending on what's going on in his life, if he feels like he can sustain it, or if he's, going on vacations and he says, forget it, it's not for me. He goes back but other than that, it's just me. And so there's a lot of meat being cooked in the house, and I eat the meat. And then there's, my husband will eat a big salad. My kids generally are protein heavy, but they have a lot of extra things on the side that, I just don't eat. So they are big on, fruit, but they also have pasta. I make homemade pizza for them. There's a lot of salad. We've got that vegetable drawer that like everybody has, where you buy all the vegetables and then 2 weeks later you throw them away. We have that in our house. So I wish it would go away. They seem to all be doing just fine. So at this point, I just make sure that the kids prioritize protein and they understand how important it is. And my son is adorable. He asks me all the time, like, how many grams of protein are in this hamburger? And he's 11. So he's very excited to one day work out with his dad and like get really strong. And he wants to make sure he eats enough protein. Like, it's great. I love it.
My son, he's 2 years old, and he's been saying, meat. And so I had to add it to my latest video. I added it to my intro because it's like, I made him record it. I was like, say it again. Because it was just like, now he's just saying it all the time because it's funny. But definitely having more meat in the house, people will crave it because that's what we need. I would love to shout out your channel. Can we do that? That'd be great.
Thank you. Yeah. So My YouTube channel is The Carnitarian Life, and my Instagram is The Carnitarian. So that's where you can find me. And generally I'll put out a video on YouTube like once a week. That's been really cool lately. I've had, a couple of videos out just recently where that channel was just sitting for so long. Oh, there it is. Thanks for putting that up. The channel was just sitting for so long, and now I'm trying really consistently to get out some videos. So yeah, I would appreciate anybody checking that out, checking out the videos there, leaving comments, subscribing, please. That would be awesome.
And you also have a spice company.
Oh, yes. So this is fun. So this is the Carnitarian Presents. This is my spice line. And what I do there is I hand blend. Oh, that's awesome. I hand blend these spice mixes, and really what they are is meant to help create meals, like family-sized meals. So one packet of, say, the chili blend or the meatball blend takes care of the seasoning for 2 pounds of meat. And so you can make this really large pot of chili. There's an original bold, which is like a spicy version. And then there's this mild and savory, which is like a really mellow version for people who don't like spicy food. And it makes the most delicious, thick, rich chili. There's gelatin added, which is like grass-fed, grass-finished beef gelatin from U.S. ranchers in there. And the addition of gelatin is what makes it so thick. And with these spice blends, like most of the time, if you're getting a blend of spices meant for chili, you're going to find a thickener in there that is absolutely not carnivore. Like it's going to be cornstarch or cornmeal or something in there to make that chili thick. They don't put gelatin in, but gelatin works great and it's carnivore. So for the chili blend, it's like canned tomato paste. It's totally optional, and some water and the spice packet and your beef, and you're good to go. The meatball blend is very similar. It's, the packet of spice, 2 pounds of meat, a couple of eggs, some Romano cheese, and it makes the most delicious Italian meatballs you'll ever have. Later this week, there's going to be a new product introduction. I'm really excited about it. It's the taco blend. So not a lot of people know about this yet, but the taco blend is coming out in a hot and mild version. So it's like a classic throwback taco meat. It's absolutely delicious. I've been having it here, and I've just blended up some tonight actually to get that onto the website soon. So if you all would check out that, it is at thecarnitarianlife.com is where it will link to the shop for the Carnitarian Presents.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Time to wheel.
Yeah, we're going to spin our meaty wheel here. And I had it already, and then I realized my microphone was still muted. I had to go back. So hold on. I'm going to get it ready here. But this is our meaty wheel, Linda, and we are going to spin for you a random question that we would love for you to answer. So here we go. And we have hunted down this meaty question for you. Did you ever experience emotional eating, and does diet help you with that?
Emotional eating, absolutely. Eating for me growing up was like ritual and culture and family, and oh, you don't feel good, have something to eat. You're looking for comfort, have something to eat. Sure. And I was just one of the lucky ones that didn't gain a ton of weight from it. Absolutely, emotional eating has been a thing for me. I mean, carnivore helps with that because it sort of puts some guardrails on the foods that you're eating. So you're staying away from those super addictive foods that you just can't eat one of, So it's definitely harder to overeat when you're eating carnivore. It's definitely possible, but it's harder. It's not like opening up a bag of Oreos or diving headfirst into a container of ice cream because you're feeling sad. It's like, if you know that your food is meat, eggs, fish, and cheese, I mean, really the only one of those that you're going to dive into with abandon if you're feeling sad is the cheese. Like, so if you know you're an emotional eater, I would say don't stock your refrigerator with string cheese because that can get out of hand. But if you've stocked your house with foods that are like meat, eggs, and fish, you learn to sort of manage the emotions better. And because the food doesn't give you that dopamine hit that you're looking for, like the meat and the eggs and the fish just isn't going to give that to you. They're not designed to hit those, bliss points. So yeah, a diet absolutely helps with that. And, it's great. It's great for people to sort of get that kind of reflection on themselves to say, you know what, maybe I've got some issues I need to deal with. And like this pint of Ben and Jerry's isn't helping me get out of the problem. I need to maybe face some problems, make some life changes, reflect on some stuff. It's a good starting point for lots of emotional healing that way.
And Linda,
Thank you so much.
Do you coach people?
I do. Absolutely. So if you go to right now, it's linked in my Instagram, my coaching. I do private only one-on-one sessions, individual sessions. Anyone who's looking to sort of get some advice without a large commitment, I'm there for you, and we could do a one-on-one session. And typically, the people I help just aren't interested in doing like a group session where they want to talk about stuff that they find too personal, that they don't want everybody hearing, or they're uncomfortable in a group setting. That's why I stick with the private one-on-ones, and it's been really helpful for a lot of people. And yeah, I would love to meet with anybody who's looking for any help, either getting started on a carnivore or a ketogenic diet, or tweaking some things because they're not seeing the results that they were hoping for.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I think, are we ready to roar out?
Fantastic. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. Get your roars ready in the chat, everybody.
Oh, sorry. One last thing. Aid asked if we use any tallow. I use Purely tallow. It's the best stuff. What about you guys?
I use Laura Russell's on russellbrands.com, and that's brands with a Z. And yeah, she sells tallow products, and I use that. They're great.
Anybody else?
I use Fancy Farm skincare, which I love, which I've used since the very beginning. They came out, I don't know, it was 4 years ago or something. It was the first tallow cream, and they were carnivores, and I was like all about it. And I've been using all the Fancy Farm things for years. I love it. They're awesome. I don't want to say they're the best because I know Simply Tallow is great too, but they're the best for me.
That's awesome. I have no affiliation with any company. I don't even remember what mine is called. So yes, that's
What
the
a
answer.
well-rounded fan we have. But go to Purely Tallow. I'm just kidding. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming. And let's 3, 2, 1.
Roar! Yes! Get your roars in the chat so we can put them on the screen, everybody.
It's my pig. I felt like it was the right time to do it.
There we go.
Oh, we got a lot of roars.
Oh yeah,
Get
bring
those
them up.
roars up there. Go, Adrian. Yes, Roar Pixel Roar. She's down here by my feet. Where did she go? I don't know. She came and she went. There she is. She's over there. I'd go grab her. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for watching. We love you all. We hope to see you back next Tuesday when we will have another fantastic guest to talk to. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.